Greetings, I'm David Kong, the founder and principal of It's Personal Stories. I am delighted to welcome David Mililli. He is the former CEO of Large IQ, the board chairman of Gain, and also host of the Modern Hotelier podcast. And you've been impressed to hear that he's also the mentor at the Hospitality Innovation Hub Incubator at the New York University. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you, David. Been an admirer for a long time for all the things that you've done, especially with the Modern Hotelier podcast. Very impressive growth. To help the audience get to know you, would you mind to start with your career journey and share some highlights?
Yeah, I was at business school at University of Pittsburgh, and a good friend of mine was at Cornell Hotel School. And I said I needed a job, and he said, just go to any hotel, you'll get a job. And I rode my bike to downtown Pittsburgh, and I got a job as a union busboy at the downtown Hyatt in Pittsburgh. Just was one of those things that it just got the hotel bug. It bit me. I knew I didn't want to be in food and beverage, but I just really just liked the atmosphere of the hotel. So
Wait a minute. I was the general manager at the Hyatt Pittsburgh. What year were you there?
I was there 90, I think it was 91.
Oh, okay. That was a little bit after me. Yeah.
There's always, it's funny, that hotel, there's always connections with people, and it's not one of the bigger cities, but it seems like somebody has always worked there. So
yeah,
I just loved it. So I ended up moving to Florida, going to FIU, working at Bonaventure Resort and Spa. I worked at the Hollywood Beach Hilton. And when I finished school, I moved to New York, ended up wanting to just be in the independent side because I thought that was going to be a quicker path than going through working with management companies and brands, and ended up being the youngest general manager in New York City around 1995. I ran an 80-room property right in Times Square, right next to the Eugene O'Neill Theater. And when the internet took off, I had the opportunity to join an internet startup that was not really hotel focused. It failed miserably, but we learned from that and we pivoted, and we ended up building one of the first booking engines for independent hotels in the year 2000. 9/11 hit, a lot of different issues, and then we left that company and then ended up starting a new company in 2004, which was the first one-stop shop for hotels called Open Hospitality, where we built the website, had the booking engine, did the e-marketing, SEO, great account management, and was at that many years. Ended up selling that to Pegasus, became CEO of Pegasus Solutions while the companies were broken up. And then since then, I've had CEO roles at Logic, Run Triz, C-Level at Nomadics, and just done a lot of advisory work, NYU, and just advised a lot of companies. And just recently, a couple of years ago, launched the podcast, which I never thought I'd be doing, but it's a lot of fun and I enjoy it.
What a wonderful career journey. I'm so impressed. Jumping into technology is unusual in our field because the industry is so reluctant to embrace technology, and for good reasons. But can you share with us what sparked your interest in combining hospitality and innovation?
Yeah, it really was. It was the internet. When the internet took off, just looking in, I was based in New York City, just looking in New York, it was heavily independent in the early 2000s, not so much today. And all these branded hotels had these rudimentary GDS or CRS connected booking engines that were really more feel of what a travel agent would be looking for, not a transient guest. And I just saw that there was a need. Independent hotels needed to take bookings, and that's what we did. And it was so long ago that we even had allotments in our booking engine. We had cutoffs and things of that nature. And it really just was something I enjoyed because coming from the hotel side, I really felt like selling into it. I had that connection with the people I was talking to, and it made it that much more easier. And to be honest, in selling booking engines in 2000 or 2004 and websites is a lot easier than today because there's just so much noise today with all these new technologies. But really was helping independent hotels really pushed me into the tech side.
Sounds like you were in the right place in the right time. And happens to be your interest as well. That's wonderful how it worked out. Now, what were some of the earlier experiences that were pivotal in shaping your journey?
I think early on it was the belief. I had a friend who told me nobody's ever going to put their credit card on the internet. And I just saw past that. And I just had this belief that the internet was going to change the way people travel, the way hotels operate, run, and manage. And that's what really drove me. And again, I saw this opening and I knew this was something that was going to help hotels grow their business. And even back then, without the internet, the main focus was still trying to get direct bookings. And if you recall, travel agents were the first one to have 800 numbers, and then hotels had to get 800 numbers to copy them. And as you saw what was going on with the OTAs and everything, I really knew that that 800 analogy in travel agents was going to be the OTAs versus the independent or one-off hotels, and really just focused everything, pretty much on my whole career has been focused on trying to help hotels get more direct business.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I still remember the early days. I heard the CEO of a major hotel company said that internet was a fad. So when I hear you say people aren't going to be comfortable with putting their credit card into the internet, I just remember that story. But look at how internet has changed us.
Yeah, now you wouldn't even think twice. Think about how many
No.
places your credit card is, how many Amazon purchases you do. It's funny.
Now, in the technology business, it's important to drive innovation. So how do you cultivate a culture that embraces innovation? And how do you personally stay ahead of the curve?
I think you got to be open-minded, just like the idea of someone putting a credit card or people using the internet. With companies I had, one of the things that we always did was I always had my team. We would have once a month a meeting where everyone, and these are small companies, so I know this is not necessarily realistic of big companies, but I have people on my team bring me things that they saw on non-hospitality websites that they liked and that they thought made sense. And so we would try to look at what was Ford doing on their website, or what was Staples, or things of that nature, like these random companies that had nothing to do with hospitality, but we would get these little nuggets about maybe the way they have their image and you hover over it and it expands, or you can click on this, or the way they've laid this out for the booking for buying shoes. This could be something we could do with hotels. And then there's merchandising or add-ons with certain sites. And then our booking engine, we were one of the first booking engines that had package items. So we started adding package items on there. And then we also started thinking about, okay, what's important to the guest and what's important to the hotelier. And as we thought through, we had meetings. We said, what's one of the most important things when you travel can be the weather. So why don't we send a pre-stay email that lets the guests know what the weather is going to be for the next 5 days?
Right.
And then second, it was, okay, now that guest either had a great experience or a bad experience or doesn't really care. So we were the first that were doing post-stay surveys. And then they were actually even connecting out. If the scores were good, it would connect them to TripAdvisor. And if the scores were not good, it would tell them that the GM was going to get back to them. And this was in 2004.
Wow.
Over 20 years ago. So the innovation there, I think, is always watching what's happening and always being open-minded. When somebody says something, you're like, oh, I just tried this new service called Uber. And you're like, what's that? And they're like, oh, you get in somebody's car and they drive you. Rather than saying you're crazy, saying, okay, let me find out more about what that's like. Let me experience it. Let me go try it. So I think as you immerse yourself in technology, it'll help you with your own technology.
It sounds like you were really ahead of the curve back in the 2000s, having pre-arrival and post-stay messaging. That's really tremendous. And looking at other industries is a very good way to drive innovation. You have such wonderful experience. Looking back, what's a leadership lesson that you learned the hard way?
Surround yourself with good people. Make sure you pick the right partner. If you're partnering in a business, if you don't have the right partner and the right support, just like a marriage, it can really make it difficult, especially when you're in that co-founder thing, because even though you might have different titles, that co-founder binds you together as partners. And surrounding yourself with people that are better than you, and don't be afraid to not know everything. People laugh at me. I tell them I had a salesperson that was a competitor. I won't say her name. And she was kicking my ass at my company. And 5 years later, I went to another company and I called her up and I said, hey, why don't you come work for me over here? And she said, you would hire me? And I said, of course I would hire you. I said, you were doing a great job. You were killing me. I said, you were killing my other salespeople. Why wouldn't I want the best of the best? I don't care that we were competitors in the past. So again, a lot of people say it, but I think surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you and people that you can trust and you know that are going to have your back and support you is extremely important.
I totally agree with you. I'm a firm believer of surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you
Yeah.
and whom you can trust. Now, AI is quite a rage nowadays. Everyone talks about how AI is going to change everything. Can you give us some examples of how AI can improve efficiency and effectiveness in our industry?
Yeah, I'll give you two. When I was at Lodging, we talked about revenue management and we talked about the idea of trying to pull all these data sources to make decisions on how to price your hotel or how to put restrictions on your hotel. And I would always just tell people, if I was speaking on a panel or in a presentation, when's the last time you used a physical map, a paper map? And they would say, I don't use a paper map. I said, well, use GPS, right? And they say, yeah. And I said, that's because the GPS can process traffic, it can process construction, road closures, all these different things. And that was like almost, if you think about it, almost one of our first entrees into AI, because you have this platform that's ingesting information and telling you the best route or the quickest route and the way to go. And then second, I think what's happening right now is there's a fear of AI taking away jobs. Whereas, and I know there's two sides, there's some that, are very anti-AI and some that are very pro, but I think there's a very fine balance of AI and how it can actually help improve the guest and actually can help improve the staff issues. I'm advising a company right now called Ava.ai, and what they do is they're an AI driven call agent that answers the phone at the front desk, answers the spa, answers the restaurant, answers the golf, can answer reservation calls. Now you might say, wait a second, that's taking away somebody's job. But at the end of the day, that guest who calls the front desk, they don't want to be put on hold. And that front desk agent doesn't want to put that person on hold because that stress level of knowing this person's checking in, that person's down there on the phone, I got to pick it up. When you look at that and you look at labor shortages, AI will replace certain functions, but AI is really going to help enhance, I think, in many cases, the guest experience and the staff's experience. And that front desk agent now might stay in the front desk, might move up to a front office manager, might become a GM, whereas they had that horrible experience working at the front desk and the stress of the phones and people checking. They might say, hospitality is not for me. Let me get the heck out of here. So I think AI's got it's affecting us all. You know that, your audience knows that, and it's not going anywhere. It's like when the internet first came out, everybody was a little scared, and then now everyone's used to it. And that's what AI is going to eventually be. Everyone's going to be comfortable and just used with it.
I totally agree with you. And I don't think we should be scared of AI. I think it's going to redefine the roles
Correct.
in our industry, like the front desk person, for example. I think it's going to free them up to focus on what they should be doing, which is customer service.
100%.
Very good. You work with a lot of startups as the chairman of a board of Gain. And you look at the founders of these startups, what are some of the qualities that distinguish them?
I think the person who listens to advice. I've been in a lot of situations as an advisor where you spend all this time with a founder, giving them your years of experience and giving them lessons you've learned. And they still don't take the advice. They still want to do it themselves. And that's one way to learn, but then you probably don't need an advisor if you're just going to do everything on your own. And the second thing is sometimes you got to have tough conversations, because I tell people, if they say to me, what's the biggest mistake that startups and founders make? I say, one of the biggest first mistakes that they make is that they assume they should be CEO because they're the founder. And that's not always the case. I got very fortunate that I was a general manager of a hotel. So I had some of the muscles that I knew how to work sales, marketing, operations, finance. A lot of founders don't have those, and they don't know how to orchestrate and communicate amongst the sales and marketing side. There might be an engineer, so they're so focused on the engineering of the product that they neglect the sales and marketing side of it. And then they're sitting there and they're saying, wow, I got this great product, but nobody's buying it. And it's you're not getting the people or getting the help you need to really communicate why they should be buying it. So I think those are just a couple that I see in advising companies.
That's such wonderful observation. And I totally believe that if you want to be successful as a founder or leader, you gotta have the humility to listen to other opinions that are different than yours. And then you're also right. Not everyone can be a general manager. Not everyone can be a CEO.
Yeah.
We all wired differently. We should play to our strength.
And I
So
would,
very good advice.
yeah, and I would tell you the one thing that's held true for me in advising companies where there's an issue is when, and we've all been in the situation when you're talking to someone, they're not listening, they're thinking about what they want to say.
Yeah.
And then through your conversation, you can tell by the end that they didn't listen to 50% of the things I said because they just wanted to talk and get something out. And that's where, with some of these founders and startup companies, they're so eager to talk and not listen. It's the whole 2 ears and 1 mouth concept. That's golden.
That's such wonderful advice. And this is what I say to people that want to work with mentors. You got to learn to listen to mentors, not try to impress them with what you say. You got to listen to what they have to say. Now, you work with a lot of people as a mentor at the Hospitality Innovation Hub Incubator at NYU.
Yep.
What are some of the mentoring moments that were particularly meaningful to you?
So I've been fortunate enough where I also did something with the Montgomery County in Maryland. So I've had my memorable moments are I've had 3 companies that have actually won the kind of the incubator and they won the prize at the end that I've been a mentor. It was me and other mentors. It wasn't just me solo, but those have been the moments when you feel good because you feel like, hey, it's just like whether you're advising a company and they hit their sales goals or they raise their Series A, being a mentor in those situations for these young companies, the fact that they went through that competition, were able to your point, listen, learn, and then execute and actually deliver a message that, the committee voted on and picked them as the top of the group. To me, those are the moments that are great because it's both sides aligning. It's the mentor doing his job and it's the entrepreneur doing their job. And if they both focus on that, like with any business, then you've got a much higher percent of being successful.
That's very fulfilling to see that come to fruition. Now, let's talk about the Modern Hotelier podcast. It is one that I follow, and I've been very impressed with how you've already garnered over 10,000 followers in a few short years, and you're rated number 2 last year in Hospitality Podcast. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And what are some of the common themes that consistently emerge in your podcast?
Well, I'll tell you, first thing is that I think our podcast is successful because the guest is the star of our podcast. You've done a great job letting me speak in some podcasts. They don't always do that. But our theme is really about trying to educate and get the word out about hoteliers' stories, what they've been through, how they've risen to become a CEO of a hotel management group or a brand, and then also how technology companies have succeeded or are going through struggles and taking their companies to the next level. So we have a lot of focus on independent hotels. We do have brands that we talk to on the show, but really it's that education and trying to get people to learn something from the people that are in our space and hopefully help that next generation learn from people who've already gone through it. So if you listen to the podcast, there is a big component of trying to get advice and industry knowledge from both. We've had very senior people and we've had startups, and you can learn from both. And I think that's where we've done a good job, is just having a blend. We don't just have pure senior level executives. We have startups, we have senior level, mid-level, and we also make a very concerted effort to try to be as diverse as we can so that we're covering all different types of people from all different types of places.
That's excellent. Now, thinking about your podcast, what were some of the advice and perspectives that have been shared that shifted your own thinking?
What's interesting is that I would say, I don't know if it's shifted my thinking that much as it's enlightened to me, because there's a lot of people that have been on our podcast that I know personally, more on a business level, but I learned so much about their life and there's people that you meet in meetings and you meet them at high tech and other trade shows, and you know them and you might have drinks with them or whatever, but you're still not diving deep into who they are. And maybe you'll tell you where they grew up, or they might tell you where they went to school, or they might tell you about the first job they had or things of that nature. And I think that's what I've loved about it, is that there's been so many people, especially that I've known or have known of from afar on LinkedIn, that I got to meet and learn and be like, wow, like I had no idea this person knew or did all these things in their career or their life, or they did it. Sometimes it's just a hobby that they have where you're like, holy cow, this person does what? They've done X amount of marathons or triathlons, and it's cool. It's cool to learn about people, not just about their hospitality side, but just who they are too.
That's great. Speaking from my own experience, it's so wonderful to hear diverse opinions on different things, and especially about taking care of yourself, which is the next topic I want to ask you. What is the most memorable moments? For me, it was listening to this very accomplished entrepreneur. She started two companies, successfully sold two companies, CEO of a third company that she founded. And during the podcast, she broke down and started crying because she admitted that she suffered from depression. And she talked about the importance of self-care. And I thought that was just spectacular, that she would be so vulnerable and so sincere in sharing her story so the audience could benefit from her learning. That was a truly memorable moment for me. And what about you? What are some of the memorable moments in your podcast?
Season one, the very first episode we launched, was probably the most memorable moment. And it was more because I think people who know me, I like to tell stories. I like to make people laugh. And so my good friend, Anthony Mulcuri, was our first guest.
Oh, really?
And Anthony and I've known each other since 1996. We worked together for the same hotel group in New York.
Yeah.
And so I said, Anthony, so why don't you tell everybody who's listening, what's a missile pilot? And he fell off his chair laughing because he didn't realize that I remembered a story he told me from 20 years ago about when he was in the Air Force and he would go to the bar. Him and his buddies would tell all the girls at the bar that they were missile pilots. He was in the Air Force. So he would say they're missile pilots, and they would say, what's that? And he'd say, how do you think the missile gets to the destination? We ride the missile and then we jump off. And the fact that he had no idea that question was coming and that he couldn't contain himself, he basically fell off his chair. To me, that was just because that was the first episode. It was our first guest. And it was like, I got you. He was never expecting it. That was probably my funnest moment. And we've had many great moments. Same like you, some sad moments, some amazing stories about people who've traveled the world and lived in certain places. And Scott Eddy was on our program. He doesn't have a house. He travels the world and lives on cruise ships and lives in hotel rooms. He doesn't have an apartment. He might stay with family, but he has basically a place where he stores his things and comes and goes. And I've never met anybody who's done that. I never thought anybody did do that in the world. I know I've heard of people living on cruise ships. So those are the moments where you're kind of like, wow, okay, I got Anthony and Scott, you really don't have a place. Like, you just travel the world. Those are two examples for me.
Those are very special examples. Switching gears, let's talk about advice and legacy. What is the most valuable advice you've ever received?
So I grew up outside of Philadelphia in the suburbs, and every couple months, my father's father would take me and my brothers and my mom and my grandmother would take us to breakfast. And he was an interesting fellow of Greek descent, and he was a realtor. So he always came in a blazer. So at the Sunday breakfast, we'd go. It'd be at this place called the Warrington Inn. And it was always, as a kid, it was memorable because, obviously I wasn't drinking coffee at 9 years old. So you'd smell the coffee and the breakfast. And he had, I don't know if you know, the Parker pen, like that was his pen. So he basically said, come over here. And he took one of the napkins and he took his pen out and he wrote down I over E equals S. And I said, Poppy, what does that mean? He goes, if you keep your emotions if you keep your intelligence over your emotions, you'll always be successful. So that was I over E equals S. And that stuck with me as like a 9-year-old kid. And I've always tried it in my career, think like, I'm not that guy who's passive aggressive. I'm not the guy who blows up. If I blow up, if there's a very good reason, if I get upset. And in my mind, I can see that napkin. So
That's such wonderful advice.
yeah,
It's so timeless.
yeah, exactly.
That is really wonderful advice. I'm a believer of having good personal habits and routines. I like to go to bed early, get up early, and eat well and exercise and all those things. What kind of personal habits, routines for you are most impactful?
I would say, yeah, so you're right. The routine is important for me. So I I always want things scheduled. I always want to know what's going on. I always want to know what I'm trying to accomplish from meetings. If it's a meeting where I'm just helping somebody, not as important. But if I have meetings, I'm always trying to know what I want out of that meeting. Why are we taking this time? So I keep a notebook, and I always take detailed notes. But one of the things too is what I've learned, which is important, is just take some time for myself. So if everybody's asleep, including my wife, are upstairs and I'm downstairs, and I can sit on the couch and watch stupid videos on YouTube and have a nice glass of red wine and just have an hour where it's just me and just decompressing. Because right now, as better than anyone, and you've had a tremendous successful career, is that you're always on. That phone it's always right there. But I know people you go to the airport, you hear people on the phone in the bathroom, in the stall, and everything's there. So you really don't have a break. There's some people that they're taking it to bed. It's the first thing when they wake up. So for me, if you don't take some of that personal time and that mental health time, and that's just for you, but then also with your family, making sure that you're doing date night with your wife or taking a trip with your kids. Those are the things I think, maybe not as much routines, but you can make it a routine that we're gonna go on a date night. I'm gonna take my son to lunch. We're gonna go on a trip, and we're gonna go on 4 trips this year, and they're gonna be different types of trips and things of that nature. So it's not per se a true routine, but it's getting in the routine of doing things that are going to help you.
That is such wonderful advice. I'm so glad that you shared that. I totally agree with you. And I'm a believer of giving yourself some time and giving your family some time.
Yeah.
Now, you've had a wonderful career and you've come a long way. And if you were to give advice to your younger self, 20-some-year-old starting off, what advice would that be?
Yeah, I'd probably go back to my 16-year-old self and say, let's face it, you're not going to be a professional baseball player. The only thing I would tell myself is that I probably, even though I did take a lot of chances, I probably should have taken some more chances with some things, especially before having kids. So I would tell myself, take some more chances. Don't be afraid. And that doesn't mean I was conservative and didn't take chances, but I do feel like it's like when you watch an NFL game and you hear the commentators and they're saying, "Oh, they're too conservative on third down. They shouldn't have run the ball. They should have passed it or done this or that." So I would tell my younger self, you probably should have been a little more aggressive and not be as conservative.
You've certainly taken lots of chances listening to your career journey, how you got into technology. That was a huge risk that you took on. You went
Yeah.
from something that you know very well to something that you don't know very well. That is a great risk. But that's great advice. I totally agree with you. Risk taking is very important if you want to be successful. I see that we're coming to the end of our show. So I want to ask you for a final piece of advice. Our show is about personal empowerment. Would you mind to share a final advice with us?
Yeah, my final advice would be do a better job of communicating, knowing what your team wants and needs and where they want to be. So, in a recent CEO level job, I hired a woman to be in sales. And when we talked, I said, "What do you really want?" And she said, "I really want to run a sales team." And she said, "I had never had that chance. And that's what I really want." And I said, I can't give you that right now because I don't have a leader position available. I said, but what I can give you is I said, I can bring you into meetings that you would never be in. I'm going to bring you in product meetings. I'm going to be in finance meetings. You're going to get involved in marketing. I said, and you're not going to have the title, but the 2 other people I'm going to let them know that they're going to follow your lead. And I want you to step up. I want you to make decisions, and don't worry about me. You make the right decisions. And she did a phenomenal job. And then I left my position, and then she left and got a job running like a 20-person global sales team. And so for me, a lot of times we think about, what do I want? What do I need? Where do I want to be? But that doesn't necessarily help you. Sometimes it can help you more if you know where your team and everybody that you can impact, you know where they want to go, and they'll help you get there. And I think that's important. That comes a little bit from just having startups, being a mentor, having advisor roles. But I think people just forget that. And sometimes they just don't ask. And then they're like, oh, I can't believe so-and-so quit. And you're like, yeah, they quit because you didn't know that they wanted to move up or do this or that. And so they got fed up and they got bypassed, and they just went and looked for a job. And so to me, that's the advice I would give. I would say more, maybe that's more toward leaders or managers, but talk to your team, because how many times you had a friend or someone tell you, oh my God, I can't believe so-and-so quit. They were great. They were my best person. And you're like, why'd they quit? Oh, they wanted this or that. And it's like, if you would have just communicated and spoken to them, you probably could have kept them.
You're absolutely right. The most gratifying thing that you can do for your team is to show interest in their growth and development and demonstrate to them how they can get ahead. And also, like the advice you gave to this lady, that experience is even more important than a title. And look where she is now. She benefited from your wisdom. Thanks for sharing that. Regrettably, we're coming to the end of the show. I want to thank David again for taking the time to join us and such wonderful advice and perspectives. Appreciate that, David.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you, and the feeling is mutual. I've respected your career the same as, and I appreciate the kind comments to me.
Oh, thank you. And for our audience, if you enjoyed this interview, I hope you join us on itspersonalstories.com, where